Well, good day to everyone joining us, and welcome to today's X-Talks webinar. Today's talk is entitled Streamlined Accessioning with Comprehensive Labware Labeling. My name is Ryan Muse, and I'll be your X-Talks host for today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and this presentation includes a Q&A session with our speakers. Now, the webinar is designed to be interactive, and webinars work best when you're involved. So please feel free to submit your questions and your comments for our speakers throughout the presentation using the questions chat box, and we'll try to attend to your questions during the Q&A session. This chat box is located in the control panel, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you require any assistance along the way, you can contact me at any time by sending a message using the same chat panel. I'd also like to welcome our attendees viewing this presentation from our LinkedIn Live event, and I encourage you to submit questions as well via the comments tab. At this time, know that all participants are in listen-only mode, and please note that the event will be recorded and made available for streaming to those who registered on xtalks.com. At this point, I'd like to thank Computype and Thermo Fisher Scientific, who developed the content for this presentation. Computype is a recognized leader in barcode labels and pre-marked labware for life science applications. They leverage their expertise to identify and track critical assets with innovative programs that improve customers' processes and performance and control. With nearly 50 years of innovating automation and labeling solutions, they pride themselves on being able to solve identification problems that others can't. And Thermo Fisher Scientific is a global leader in labware and analytical equipment, and will be on hand today to discuss a new offering for receiving uniquely identified labware marked with barcodes, 2D codes, text, and even logos of your choice. But now I'd like to introduce our speakers for today's event. Jamie Claremont is a sales manager at Computype, where she leads a consultative team dedicated to helping clients in the life sciences sector efficiently identify and track labware. With over 20 years of barcoding expertise, Jamie specializes in labeling and barcode identification for biotech, drug discovery, diagnostics, research, and transfusion medicine. Michaela Rose serves as a technical services specialist at Computype, where she focuses on matching and optimizing the right barcoding and identification solutions to a customer's needs. With a scientific background focused on sample accessioning and optimizing laboratory operations, Michaela understands that the importance of sample identification and challenges that labs face. And as a senior product manager at Thermo Fisher Scientific, Amy Armstrong works closely across divisions to deliver new labware solutions for labs across the globe. With 15 years experience in product management, Amy specializes in innovating and commercializing new solutions that boost throughput and sample management in the lab. Now, for today's agenda, we'll be addressing accessioning challenges and risks with Jamie Claremont, labware labeling and identification options with Michaela Rowe, and Amy Armstrong will be then discussing Thermo Fisher's custom labware barcoding program before we get to then some of your audience questions. But without further ado, though, I'd like to hand things over to our first speaker for today, Jamie Claremont. Jamie, you may begin when you're ready.
So thank you so much for joining us today. And imagine that you've moved into a home where you get to enjoy this space. It's a great pantry. Or you built this pantry in your home. It's a blank canvas that you and your household can leverage. Things start off easy and you have plenty of room. And as you start coming back from your favorite grocery store, you can easily put away the contents. But then things easily get busy. The cereals somehow get separated. The canned goods get hidden behind things like the flour. And then when you go to cook things, you just can't find those ingredients. You find that things become expired. You find that you can't meal plan. People in your household can't find those snacks when they go needing it. And things start to look like this. So you find that you have too many of the same items, and you just decide that you're going to reorganize that pantry and pull out the contents and build a system where you can easily put away those items so that you and others in your household can spend less time searching for food, experience less waste, and your meal planning gets back on point. And then your pantry starts looking more like this. So in your lab, you are focusing on faster and more accurate research and testing and maintaining chain of custody. You can do that by implementing a system with good identification, organization, and streamlining the accessioning of new samples. And you achieve that by working with a strategic partner who is a resource for implementing the best workflows that align with your objectives. My name is Jamie Claremont of Computype, and we are teaming up with Thermo Fisher Scientific to talk with you about the best ways to streamline sample accessioning with reliable labeling methods. In a 2020 survey, it was found that barcode systems are 4 times less likely to produce errors than manual entry systems. During this next hour, we will break down the best ways to streamline sample accessioning with reliable labeling methods. Learn how to eliminate errors, simplify your work life, and determine whether in-house or outsourcing barcode printing is right for you. Computype is a recognized leader in barcode labels and pre-marked labware for life science applications, with nearly 50 years of innovating automation and labeling solutions. Together, we can solve your labeling challenges that others can't. For nearly 50 years, we have served life science organizations globally with better ways to identify labware so that those organizations can focus on mission-critical scientific initiatives. We helped the largest U.S. blood collecting organization go from this to this, a visually inspected barcode color-coded label set that tracks the nation's blood supply, where data integrity is absolutely critical. And I'm really proud to share that we still support that solution to this day. At Computype, we offer a comprehensive solution. Whether you want to trust a label sticking to a tube in cryogenic conditions, or you want to move to printers and automation in-house that you can better print and apply labels to tubes, vials, and plates. So from getting you the right material to helping you with automation, and then if you want to get out of the labeling business altogether, we have a service where you can receive your required labware, marked or barcoded per your specification, delivered ready to use, guaranteed, where you don't need to worry about investing in equipment or managing inventory or purchasing a bunch of consumables. Today, we are going to review some methodologies for labeling labware, and we are going to help you figure out what's right for your lab. So this was a question that was asked when you went to go register. Which of the following is the biggest labeling challenges you are dealing with? Labels falling off, duplicated sequences, too much manual data entry time, too much time spent labeling, or is it something else? And these are the results. So over 25% of the audience that had registered today for this webinar had said that they're spending too much time doing manual data entry. And then under other, a big challenge that was citing was managing sequences, especially when dealing with a third party and avoiding labware collision. And then coming up third would be too much time spent labeling. And the good news is that we are going to address these challenges head on in this webinar. And Ryan, right now, we're going to run a poll.
Yes, thank you so much. So appearing on everyone's screen right now is a poll that you can participate in by selecting any of the answers you see in front of you and then clicking submit. The question that we're asking you is, how disruptive is your lab's labeling challenge today? Your answer options are very disruptive, moderately disruptive, slightly disruptive, not at all disruptive, or you just aren't quite sure yet. In a moment, we'll continue to hear from our speakers today, but for now, we'd love to hear from you. For those for those watching from GoToWebinar, you can participate in the poll, again, to the question of how disruptive is your lab's labeling challenge today? Give you a few more seconds to consider an answer, and then we'll take a look at what your results are. All right, it looks like we have most of the answers in. Everyone, thank you very much for participating. Let's look at the results for this. We have 38% of you selecting for slightly disruptive, 23% both for moderately and then not quite sure, and then 15% of you selecting not at all disruptive. None of you have said very disruptive. That's probably good to see. So thank you very much for participating. I'll hand it back to our speaker.
Thanks so much, Ryan. So over half the audience had said that labeling challenges were somewhat or moderately disruptive. And again, we are going to talk about those challenges and ways that you can alleviate those. So uniquely identifying samples during accessioning ensures accurate tracking, proper sample handling, and maintaining data integrity. It enables efficient retrieval, analysis, and supports the collection of reliable data for research, diagnosis, and treatment development. We work with organizations who aren't necessarily losing samples, but they're not aware of the efficiencies that they can gain in the process. So it's really critical for organizations to evaluate their workflow and learn the gains that they can achieve. We recently helped a diagnostic lab, and they didn't have any trouble locating those samples, but an evaluation uncovered that they were just spending too much time labeling. So we helped them with a printer, a scanner, labels, and software so that when they were aliquoting, the next number was available, and they were getting away from that manual data entry. So what they were doing previously wasn't wrong. We just helped them gain some efficiencies, and we helped them save hours a month. So let's get into some of these common difficulties. So time consuming. So more samples, more time. You might be working with staff shortages or project deadlines. Manual data entry is prone to errors, especially when you're keying things in. Things like barcodes and scanners that we're going to get into later in this webinar are really helpful to make sure that data is automatically captured and digitally stored. Organizing high volumes of incoming samples. There might be ebbs and flows in traffic coming into a lab, for example. You might have peak time with specific couriers dropping off samples. And it makes it really challenging to get ahead if you're starting off the day with a really high amount of samples to get through. And then properly assigning samples to protocols or downstream processes. You may have specific requirements per project. Some of the labels coming in, some of the product coming in may need to be relabeled. Maybe it's not labeled at all. You have agreements with some of your other clients. So making sure that you have protocols assigned on the front end can really help with that. And we're going to talk about that in a couple minutes. And then when you're dealing with those high volume of samples, it's really difficult to understand how long those samples have been out, so that you're not risking samples life cycle. So many labs do their absolute best to uniquely identify those samples because they can't afford to take the risk. So for example, a lab could be using barcoding and printing on a paper label for a tube that has to be put in the fridge. So they are using unique identifiers. But the other problem, though, is that they take on the risk of duplication because they're using spreadsheets to help keep track of the next number to use. And then with the condensation in the fridge, the text can smear, and then the labware, is unidentifiable, and nobody wants that. So labware prep time is lost, as well as that sample and research time. So let's talk about minimizing those challenges while you are identifying those samples. So sequence duplication and labware collision. So have a system where other departments have visibility into numbers that are being generated. And there are Labware OEMs out there that offer SKUs that have barcodes. So just have a system where you can keep track of those numbers. And then you can also think about working with a service that can offer you customized sequences so that you don't even have to worry about going back and blocking out those numbers. And again, you can avoid the duplication. So under, process bottlenecks, incoming samples and non-standardization are absolutely ripe for bottlenecks. Some things come in labeled, some things don't, and so that the staff is having to evaluate each project requirement. So again, implementing those protocols so that the staff knows exactly what's required for each project is really helpful. And then under label failure, there are risks with handwriting or lack of label automation, using labels that are just frankly not fit for the application. Labels could wing, they could smear, they could not fit in racks, they could fall off. And these other things lead into loss of sample or data, and that's something that nobody wants. So let's start talking about some considerations for streamlining identification and accessioning. So under size and shape, so consider the Labware and what you want to print on that. Do you want to identify a cap? Do you want to do a side? Do you want to barcode the bottom of the tube, for example, because you know downstream you're going to implement scanners that will be able to read that. Ultimately, it comes down to making sure that you label your physical sample clearly and using a system that the data is automatically captured. So think about any type of custom size or material requirements. You can also think about utilizing color or grad lines. And think about the position of that label on the Labware. So does it have to be placed in a specific spot because of an instrument or, again, downstream cameras? And then that label content, do you want to have a prefix? Do you need to have a suffix? Do you need to have additional eye-readable or human-readable, as you may heard it, to be also printed on that sample for, again, easier identification? And under conditions and environments, not all labels are created equal. And so you want to consider the chemical exposure as well as temperature exposure that the label will be withstanding to make sure that you're not dealing, again, with loss of samples like we talked about previously. There are label materials out there that will survive cryogenic, LN2, exposure to things like DMSO or xylene. And again, considering any type of instrumentation abrasion that the label in the Labware is going to go through. Under types of barcodes, really common to use a 1D barcode, and then things like 2D and other things like QR barcodes are becoming really popular. And so you want to implement a system where each sample gets a unique barcode that's linked back to the information in the database. And it can be easily scanned and during accessioning and throughout the sample's life cycle to quickly retrieve and verify those details. And text only is not going to get you there. So QR codes can store a considerable amount of data and basically reduce the risk of having that manual entry and as well as transcription errors, which helps streamline the retrieval of the data. And marking method absolutely matters. Most organizations move really quickly from handwriting to printing labels or marking on the Labware as their throughput climbs, because ultimately they want to save time, minimize errors, which all also save cost. And so there's other technologies in addition to labels, like what I was referring to a couple minutes ago, technologies like laser or ink. And so make those considerations for the type of marking method that your team needs. And then again, there are services out there where you can get out of the labeling business altogether and you don't have to worry about investing in equipment or buying a bunch of consumables. You can work with a vendor that will help tailor a solution to exactly what you need, the exact Labware, the exact marking method, meeting the specifications so that you can take that task off of your plate. And when working with a vendor, The good news is that you don't have to do it on your own. There are companies like Computype or Thermo Fisher Scientific that will partner with you. And so a good vendor will also help you during a validation process and even come on site to work with you. It's really encouraged to look for a vendor that has a quality system and one that can help you with compliance. And as you're evaluating your workflow, it's an opportunity to look at the types of labware that you're working with, and you might be able to standardize so that, again, you can help with inventory, you can help with those protocols, you can focus on fewer potentially different label types, again, with standardization. And again, a good vendor will help you through that process. And with automation, by automating tasks like data entry or sample tracking, you reduce a chance of human error. And going back to the poll results, that disruption that you're seeing in your day-to-day. And ultimately, you want to speed up processes while ensuring that data is consistently captured and updated, just like those barcode scanners that I had mentioned earlier. So later we are going to share some information about label automation. And for now, I'm going to turn this over to Michaela, who's going to talk with you about strategies for identification. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you, Jamie. So once you make note of those important considerations, you can then determine what method of labeling is going to be best for your lab. So what I'm going to do today is walk you through a couple of those identification strategies and options, and we can discuss the benefits and limitations of each one. So starting off here with print on demand, this is probably widely the most common method that's going to be used within laboratories. And the key benefit here is the ability to accommodate real-time data. And when I say real-time data, I mean that you're receiving the data immediately and you need to very quickly transition this on to some kind of identifier or label for your samples. Print on demand grants you maximum flexibility. It keeps the control within your lab. It's faster than handwriting onto Labware. And it still enables barcoding, and oftentimes these printers are programmable to serve a specific function, like if you wanted barcode replication. The limitation with this method, however, is that it's still pretty time-consuming, and as noted in the poll question, that's definitely one of the concerns. Computype actually did a study to calculate the average time it takes to label 1,000 vials, and we found that print on demand, it takes about 3¼ to 4¼ hours. In addition to this time, you also, with any kind of equipment, you're going to have some kind of maintenance. You'll have to manage your own label template creation. And oftentimes we see that one or multiple members of your staff are going to kind of have to act as your internal specialist and really familiarize themselves with this equipment and be able to act if any kind of troubleshooting or issues during your printing process. The next step up from this is going to be automated print and apply, and this offers a lot of the same benefits. You can still accommodate real-time data, you have a lot of flexibility in your printing, you can still barcode, but it is substantially faster than hand applying. For that same 1,000 vials, it reduces the average time to about 1 hour to 1.5 hours to get all of those labeled. We have a couple more limitations to consider, however. The first one is definitely a medium to large capital investment. So there's a pretty broad range of products when it comes to automated print and apply. You can start with a small desktop semi-automated unit that's still going to require an operator. These will be priced probably just below $10,000, and this range climbs all the way to large walk-away units that serve multiple functions, and those can be well into the 6 figures. But in addition, as the complexity of your equipment grows, you also have additional maintenance and configuration. You'll still have to manage these label templates. And it does require maybe a little bit more in-depth of an internal specialist, a little more training, but also it limits the labware that you can use by a bit because each piece of equipment, it's going to have its own specifications, meaning that it can accommodate certain sizes of labware, and you'll have to make sure your labware fits within those specs. And then if that equipment does happen to accommodate different sizes, there's likely going to be some kind of modification or adjustment step that has to happen between runs. Next options are great for labs that do not want to be involved with printing whatsoever. Starting off with pre-printed labels, this is a great cost-effective option. It ensures really high quality prints. It's still going to be faster than handwriting onto tubes. And it even enables kind of a next level of barcoding, whereas if you outsource your printing, you'll gain access to sequence management, barcode verification, and duplication prevention. And by outsourcing your printing, you will also have the option of adding color more easily to further organize your samples. The limitations with this come in that it's still, if you are taking pre-printed labels and then hand applying, it's still going to be pretty time consuming. You're looking at about 3 to 4 hours for that 1,000 vials, but this could be drastically reduced if you couple this with some kind of automation. But it limits your flexibility a little bit because these are pre-printed and you can no longer accommodate real-time data. Lastly, and by far the fastest method, is going to be pre-marked labware. And this completely eliminates all in-house labeling labor. So these products you design ahead of time and they are delivered to your facility completely ready to use, and you can immediately start your lab work. If you have any kind of downstream automation that requires barcode scanning, this is great because you can get really precise placement and ensure a barcode or image is in the same place every single time to ensure really easy scanning downstream. It streamlines your labware sourcing. There's no large capital investment in equipment. It still enables that next level of barcoding as with pre-printed labels and accommodates the addition of color. As far as limitations go, once again, you will not be able to accommodate any kind of real-time data. And I would say it limits your rapid flexibility, meaning that you have a lot of choice and a lot of options in the upfront design process when using custom pre-marked labware. You can choose placement, you can choose sizes, you can determine your content, but you will just not be able to adapt at the drop of a hat if something does arise. And when you're considering these options, don't think you're limited to just one. We see plenty of labs use multiple of these methods in different parts of their workflow, or even combine methods to get the best results. I previously worked in a lab where I was accessioning samples for clinical trials focused on childhood oncology, and we were solely printing on demand because we received in real-time data, but this data was also sensitive patient information that couldn't be seen outside of our laboratory. And as we were hand applying labels onto these samples, they were moving around within our dry ice bin if they were already frozen samples, or when we were loading them into freezer boxes to go into our -80. A lot of times these labels would pop off, and if we were not completely vigilant to make sure we immediately reattach those, there was a risk of those samples becoming unidentifiable, and no one wants to see that when you're doing that kind of research. Next, pre-marked labware is a growing method of identification, and a lot of people might not be aware of the breadth of services that are available when using pre-marked labware. First, if you are using any kind of custom sequences, you gain sequence management, barcode verification, and duplicate prevention. You can also determine custom packaging, which comes with sorting to whatever is going to be most efficient for your lab. So that could be sequentially ordered labware, that could be color-coded, that could be organized by protocol number. And if you are using any kind of tubes or vials, you can choose whether to have them capped or uncapped. Coordination of labware. If you are barcoding both the side and the top of a vial, That barcode verification step comes back into play where not only are you checking if those codes are scannable, you are also ensuring that they match each other 100% of the time. You have access to full spectrum color coding. You can do custom size labels for each size of your different kinds of labware. You even have a choice when it comes to production environment. So at Computype specifically, we have an RNase DNase limited production area and an ISO class 7 clean room. You can add high resolution full color logos and graphics. And if you are currently tear weighing your containers, that can actually be done at time of marking and be sent to you in a full report. So lastly, to summarize, unique identification is vital to properly accessioning samples within the lab. It increases efficiency through processing, retrieval, all the way to data collection. It aids to reduce mistakes and helps ensure samples remain identifiable, to not lose data that contributes to diagnostic tests, research, and treatment development. There are a medley of different identification options available, and selecting a method that best suits your lab not only improves your accessioning practices, but helps increase the efficiency of all downstream workflow activities. The good thing is you do not have to make these decisions on your own, and there are companies like Computype and Thermo Fisher that have decades of experience with identification. We are here to tailor solutions to the specific needs of your lab and allow you to focus on your life-saving scientific work. I'll now turn it over to Amy Armstrong to tell you more about Thermo Fisher's capabilities for pre-marked labware.
Thank you, Michaela. Appreciate that. All right, so let's move into my slides. So I'm very excited to share that we have launched a new custom printing program where we can customize matrix, nunc, and Nalgene tubes, latch racks, and accessories. Why is this important? Because custom printing allows for optimized sample accessioning and improved tracking and identification. In addition, the new program allows for fast quoting, minimum order quantities, very low minimum order quantities, and fast turnaround times. We have dedicated stock ready for customization. Here are some examples of our custom printing capabilities shown on one of our 2 ml Nalgene tubes. We offer color and black and white logos. We have custom linear barcodes, text labels. We have grad lines, fill lines, and 2D labels. So we have a large assortment there. We also offer custom coders where we can add data matrix codes as shown here. These are for our manual tubes, so we have that option as well. For our racks, we offer 2 ways to print, laser and cured ink. Both are great options, but offer different capabilities. One being the ability to add color with the cured ink option. So you can see on the right-hand side, we have color logos. So we offer the black and the white, but you can see a nice representation of what we're able to do on the racks. So who would benefit from customization? So basically anyone who is looking to improve efficiency and reduce mistakes in their workflow, enhance sample identification and traceability. This is great if you need an audit trail, and increase brand awareness and recognition. So that, like I said, or like I showed on the previous slide, we can add company logos we can add name, logo, we can add it to tubes and racks. So again, a lot of options and variations for customization. And the key benefits to customization, there are many. Some include saving money. So customization eliminates the need for investing in expensive labeling equipment. This translates to significant savings and allows those funds to be used for critical areas of research. Saving lab space. So by outsourcing the labeling task, you free up valuable lab space. Reduction of errors. So, by using fill lines and text and color, this really ensures correct sample identification and quantity. and added security. So, we've had a lot of people mention they have manual tubes and now they want to start, getting them into an automated workflow or make sure they're able to identify them. So, we're able to then transform those manual tubes into barcoded traceable samples. So here's one example where a customer requested 3 tubes with specific words printed on each of them and a different colored cap on each. So this was tailored to their workflow. This customization not only met their specific needs, but also improved efficiency and accuracy in handling their samples. So if you are interested in doing any type of custom printing, you will get access to this brochure, which has more information, or you can easily request a quote by scanning this barcode. So this wraps up my portion of the presentation, and now I will turn it over to Ryan to kick off our Q&A.
Well, thank you very much for this very insightful presentation. As we move into the Q&A, I'd like to remind the audience to take a look at the handouts section within the GoToWebinar control panel, where you'll find some additional documentation related to today's presentation to download for some further reading. I'd also like to invite our audience to keep sending their questions or comments right now for this Q&A portion of the webinar. If you're attending via GoToWebinar, please use the questions window, and for those watching on LinkedIn Live events, feel free to post your question in the comments section. Now, I've already received some questions from the audience, so we'll get ourselves started with those. The very first question that I have for you all would just like to know, when it comes to accessioning, what is the biggest challenge you see labs struggling with?
Yeah, I think I can take that. So in my personal experience, the lab that I previously worked at, our biggest challenge was labels falling off, especially this can happen if you aren't perfectly matching your label material to whatever environment your samples are going to be stored in. But more often than anything else, I see it's just time consuming. And a lot of times people can make small improvements in different parts of their workflows, slightly adjust their labeling strategies, and you can also see pretty significant time savings just by incorporating some of those changes.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. For our next question here, it asks, what is the best way to easily track and identify samples so that they just don't get lost?
Yeah, I can take that, Ryan. Thank you. Always by putting some type of a barcode on there. So, having a traceable barcode, it's very easy to identify and locate those. I know a lot of times, people open up their freezer doors and they're looking, taking time to look for samples. So, a barcode, especially a custom barcode. So, we offer both off the shelf and custom, but we're seeing a lot of customers requesting the custom, either, like I said, by putting a name, they can print words, or we do human readable, 1D. So we have a lot of options, but really the best way is with the custom barcoding.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next question then is just curious, what are some of the cost-effective ways that their lab could quickly improve their accessioning process?
Sure, Ryan, I can take that. So as Michaela and Amy said, barcoding really is a great way to improve that if a lab is currently not doing that during the accessioning process. And then in thinking about incorporating any type of benchtop automation or pre-barcoded labware, certainly based on the lab's need. And then ultimately they want to review their workflow to see where major time and labor requirements are spent. And an audit or an evaluation through a trusted partner can help uncover where they can make those gains. And it's all about helping the staff get back more into value-added activities where labs can lead into partners that specialize with barcoding who share best practices because they don't have to do it on their own. There are resources available to help them with those cost-effective ways.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So you mentioned workflow, and I've got a question here from someone wondering just what are some of the best ways to start incorporating custom solutions for their workflow?
I can jump in there. So I think the best way to start with implementing custom solutions is don't do it by yourself. Reach out to a vendor or a partner like Thermo Fisher or Computype, someone that can help guide you through the process. It's unnecessary to have to try to become an expert in all things identification, and there are resources out there that can help you do it and find the best way that will still accommodate your current infrastructure, what you have in terms of equipment, and they can guide you to certain solutions based on your budget or any other concerns that you might have.
And Ryan, can I add to that? Michaela, that's great. And don't hesitate to get a quote, because I think a lot of times we have customers who think adding in automation or doing custom labeling is going to be expensive, but often at times it actually saves them money because there's a lot of time spent with hand labeling. Not only that, there's that risk of those labels falling off. So I always say it's worth getting the quote to see, by doing the automation, in most cases, they're able to save money in their workflow.
Right. And Michaela and Amy, like a good partner, I think you would agree, would help a lab determine the best ROI case, right? What works for that lab, and understand the cost having to do with lost samples or lack of data really can drag a lab down. And so leaning into a partner that can help make that evaluation on the workflow, I think is a really good place to begin. And as Amy said, it's often people, I think, become surprised about how easy and affordable these solutions are when they think about the cost or the risk of not doing that.
Very good answer. I'm sure they appreciate it. Thank you so much. I've got then a perfect question for you right now then, which is just, I want to start improving my accessioning process. So where do I begin?
You want me to take that? I would say reach out to one of us. So, of course, if you're interested in, the storage tubes, like I said, Matrix, Nunk, and Nalgene, we have those, and accessories. If you're interested in getting a custom quote there, definitely reach out to me. And then I think you guys saw in the presentation all the capabilities that Computype has. So, we will definitely work with each one of you to look at your workflow and what your needs are, and to help with getting you more information on how to proceed.
I put that QR code back up again for you, for the audience to take a scan of. Another question here, getting back to workflow, someone's wondering if there's a way to start adding customized automations to the workflow, the lab's workflow.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I can go ahead. Yes, you can absolutely add custom automation. A lot of times, especially if you are starting from scratch and you have no automation whatsoever, starting with some of those smaller semi-automated units just to kind of get your foot in the door with automation and start getting away from some of those hand labeling practices. Many of those semi-automated applicators are just attachments onto standard thermal transfer printers, so it's really easy for labs to start incorporating those, because it essentially starts as just downloading a print driver and using it the same as you currently are with thermal transfer printing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that question, and all of you for all of the answers. But we've reached the end of the Q&A portion for our webinar. If we couldn't attend to your questions, know that the team at Computype and Thermo Fisher Scientific will follow up with you, or if you have some further questions, you can direct them to the email addresses that are up on the screen. I want to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. You will be receiving a follow-up email from X-Talks with access to the recorded archive for this event. A survey window will be popping up on your screen as you exit, and your participation is appreciated as it helps us to improve our webinars. Now, additionally, I've shared a link to view the recording of today's event in the chat box, which you can share with your colleagues so they may register for the recording here as well. For those who are watching via LinkedIn Live events, we encourage you to visit xtalks.com so that you can register for this event and then gain access to features such as viewing that recording and more. Now, please join me once more in thanking our speakers for their wonderful time here today. We hope that you found the webinar informative. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you for coming.